Hey, hello everyone. Good morning, and thank you so much for attending today's webinar. Also, since a lot of you guys have also attended last week's webinar, I'm really glad you guys are utilizing this lockdown period for knowledge upgradation, and we are very excited to show you all what we can during this period so that you are aware of what's happening in the industry uh, through industry experts. So I'm just going to start this webinar in a second, but just stay tuned and I hope everyone is safe. All right, it's time up for our presentation to start, and we're very excited to do this webinar because it's not just me who's going to talk for almost an hour like last time. We have another industry expert today along with us. His name is Shashi Kumar Nair. He's the senior solution architect with NVIDIA, and he's an expert in technology. As I speak about the software part, he's going to talk about the technology part, which is involved with the Arnold GPU. And if you guys are aware of, Autodesk has leveraged the NVIDIA RTX technology for the GPU rendering. And at the after I speak about the software part, Shashi is going to speak about the technology part so that you guys are aware of what new technology is being adapted by the country or maybe the world. Yeah, so let's not waste more time. Just once again, I hope everyone is safe at home, and you guys are utilizing this time learning, educating yourself, and yes, of course, good amount of family time too. So let's start today's session on Arnold GPU, which we recently released Arnold 6 during December 10th. And before I start on my presentation, if you remember, we have a safe harbor statement. We just make sure everyone are aware of what all are we showing in today's presentation, which is already released, is absolutely fine. But in case if I'm talking about something which will be coming in the new releases, we don't promise any dates and stuff, so that you don't have to decide on your purchases depending on today's presentations. It's absolutely your call. So yes, of course, the presentation I'm going to talk about is purely on Arnold. I am not very sure how many of you guys had attended the previous Arnold sessions. I had done a couple of them last year, and I remember that when I did the Arnold GPU presentation, it was still on beta. So, and it was in public beta, where I requested a lot of you guys to download the beta version of Arnold and use it in your day-to-day life or with your existing setups and all. So let's understand why Arnold and what is Arnold. For a lot of people who still are not aware of the Arnold being existing in the as a default render inside Max and Maya, it's a path tracing in production pioneer. The workflow is very simplified. We made it simple so that anyone who is adapting Arnold from their own traditional render, they don't have to find it very difficult. The controls are very simple so that the learning curve is absolutely smooth. It can handle complex scenes as well, because we have a couple of case studies with our customers who have said that earlier in the previous, or maybe with other renders, they had to break down the scenes, but with Arnold they can render the complete scene at one go, and it can handle complex scenes very easily, and that's one very good thing about it. And of course, it's award winning. So Arnold as one single plugin works in all these applications which you can see on your screen. It can be Maya, it can be Max, Softimage, Houdini, Cinema 4D, and Katana. Of course, the setups are different for all these applications, but the licensing is the same. So, most of the time people buy industry collection. I'm going to talk about industry collection somewhere at the end of my presentation because there is something really exciting about it. But the licensing, like, with industry collection, you get 5 license, one industry collection, you get 5 license of Arnold. Now, what are you going to do with 25 licenses if you have purchased 5 industry collection? So if in any production pipeline you are using other products as well, like Softimage or Houdini or Cinema 4D or Katana, you can use these licenses in the other applications as well. So you don't have to go and purchase Arnold licenses separately for all these production tool. So it's as easy as you can see. The second, okay, before I go ahead, I just wanted to tell everyone that there is, please stay tuned till the end of the presentation. We have some poll questions which we will be asking. Very simple questions and nothing to worry about. And we have some Autodesk goodies which will be given to people who answer all the questions. And you stand a chance to win some Autodesk goodies. So yeah. Why Arnold? As I said, it's easy to use. The performance is excellent. It's faster and it's easily scalable. Now, when I say easily scalable, there is a right example of it because of the lockdown, I'm at home and I'm doing this presentation from my home laptop, which is a 4.5 years old laptop, or maybe 5, yeah, 4 years old. Yeah, it's a very antique laptop, which I can say. The graphic card is also old, but you can see that it does perform. So in case if you have older hardwares with you guys and you want to not throw it away, you can use these hardwares as a render farm and it will do the job. Obviously the speed will vary depending on the hardware, but it's not that it will not do the job at all. So this is something which excited a lot of studio guys, and when they had the old hardware upgraded to the new one, the old ones, they use it as a render farm and they got good amount of frames rendered in these old hardwares as well. So that's the reason we call it as very easily scalable. And at the same time, Arnold is award winning because in 2017 we got the Scientech engineering award for the best rendering tool. Now let's talk about the tools which we have inbuilt, and that's what making Arnold very popular. Is it's not just that you have to create everything from scratch. I'm going to talk about that when I show the software part. There are various presets which allows you to start your job almost above 50%, and all you need to do is customize it depending on your requirement. So Toon Shader was one which we not recently, maybe last year we added it into our pipeline. It's not completely 2D. You also have this 2.5D effect depending on your requirement. This was actually a production tool which was created for a Japanese game company, and now that became a part of the Arnold package. So you can understand that all these presets which you have inside the software is not something which was just randomly created, but they were created for production use. A couple of more node based, like shading networks like Cloth, which was added, which is very good for people who deal with interior designing and architecture and so on. They can utilize this to create some fantastic looking fabrics and sheen and stuff like that. The cell noise again was a very integral part of the Arnold tool, with which you can create some fantastic abrupt scenes like this. The round corners, which is very popular because we all know that when you have to create round corners or bevel the edges, it becomes tedious, one, and secondly it will increase the mesh size. So to avoid that, we have shaders which can do the job for you. So it's basically the camera projection technique which it behaves in such a way that it creates round corners without actually going into the modeling environment and creating the round corners. Couple of examples from customers who have shared their output with us using Arnold are all these. I'm just going to quickly go. This is a live Jaguar, not a real one, but created by MPC using the Arnold renderer. And there are a couple of Indian customers also who had used Arnold extensively. And you can, if you people who have seen this film know the scale of this film. They have huge amount of the file size are huge. There are too many elements in the scene, and yet Arnold could handle this such kind of scenes very easily. Now, the whole idea about Arnold is leveraging the Arnold RTX GPU. Now let's talk about what is so all I spoke about was Arnold tool. So I just want to introduce you to what exactly Arnold does and how does it work and so on, so that I can move to the next step. So I have a file which is in the scene. I'm just going to switch off the grid, and all I have is lit up with a one static light. Okay, this is a quad light, and if you see in the Arnold tab, of course you need to go when you install Maya for the first time. You need to go to the plugin manager, okay, and you need to press M2A, which is the Arnold plugin, and make sure that this is on. If this is off, you might not find this tab at all. So don't worry or don't panic in case if you're new to this Arnold tool. If all you need to go is inside the plugin manager, just click the M2A plugin on, and all you can get is the Arnold tab, where inside this, first let's go and see the light tab. You have a couple of lights: area light, sky dome, mesh light, photometric, portal, and for physical light. The people who have attended my previous webinars, if you would remember, I have spoken about each and every light, but now I'm just going to use the area light for time being. And when I click on okay, let me just make sure that the render is in CPU. Okay, perfect. And I'm just going to say render and output, and you can see this is what I get, and it's a very fast render. So you can see when I'm just moving my scene and the render updates, and this is a CPU render so far. I've not moved to the GPU at all, and if I just want to move, toggle and stuff like that, it can do the job very easily. And not only that, I'm just going to select the light, for example, and let me increase the intensity of light or decrease the intensity of light. There are various shapes of lights like chords, cylinders, disc, and so on. I can just select any one of them and reduce the spread of light. If you want to make it like a spotlight kind of an effect, you can do that. And also you can play around with the size of the light. So if you reduce the size of the light, you can see that the light actually behaves like a spotlight. Now there is a tool called as normalize. If I switch it off, what does this do is the entire intensity is given to this size of the light. So when I increase the light or size, okay, it's going to get more light, and if I decrease the size of the light, it's going to reduce the light. But in case if you don't want that, you can stick to normalize. And what does this do is the amount of light remains the same. So if I just say intensity, and all you need to do is you just need to increase the size of light. So when I increase the size of the light, okay, the light will get dimmer because one intensity, that intensity amount, get distributed with the entire light size. So this is good when you don't want the light to be increased, but you want the same amount of light to be distributed among a whole scene, like a fill light, like a studio light kind of a thing. So it depends on what you have or what you want. You can just play around with the scale of the light and keep the normalize option on. I'm just going to switch to the quad light, and I'm going to say that I don't want the spread. I just want it to be normal, and maybe the light intensity can be slightly dimmer so that I can see the details of the car as well. Now, I'm not going to get into the detail because we have done this a lot before. Now, Arnold also does not just comes with the light, but it also comes with its shaders. So I'm just going to open the hypershade. Pardon me for this little sluggishness. As I said, I'm working from a home system and the system performance is little lagging. But of course, that's how we are all dealing with, because we are all logged on at home and we have very limited options to play around with it. And yes, all right. So when I go inside, okay, you can see there are all these different shaders, and I click on the Arnold shade, the Arnold tab, you can say, or maybe just click on the Arnold shaders. You have all these different shaders available for the Arnold tab itself, and these are all AI standard surface shader. Now we all know, people who work for as a texturing artist and lighting and look and development guys, they know the standard surface shaders are going to be the universal ones, and easily movable from this application to another one. So that's the whole idea about it. So once you have already assigned a material, okay, I can the Arnold render view is also very excellent. Like for example, I can select element from the render view also, so I don't have to actually go and select the object. So if I am working on the light and this render view is completely blocking my viewport, I still don't have to worry about, because all I need to do is select the light and play around with the lighting. And if I want to change the texture of the car, I can still select it from the render view itself. It's absolutely fine, and you can see it's been selected in the viewport. So I go back to the shader which has already been applied, and this is a car paint which is being given to this object. And yes, if I want, I can slightly increase the size of this, which I can do it from the viewport as well, but I just don't want you guys to be confused with too many navigations. I can just change the color of the car to maybe a deep red Ferrari color. Okay, and you can see it actually interacts and updates immediately. Or you want to have some dark blue color of shade, you can do it very quickly. Now these things are quite easy to handle because the standard surface shader works well, and obviously you can play around with many more things like the metalness of this car, or you want to give the car a bit of a matte finish which does not reflect object. You can increase the diffuse roughness and make it look like more matty kind of a thing. And you have the specularity, you can reduce it so that the car doesn't look too reflective and give a different look to the car and all together. Now let's not change, because these are self-explanatory. You can change the parameters and understand what's happening to the object and decide on. But the whole idea was to talk about the presets. Like for example, this is a car paint which you can see. The AI standard surface comes with a lot of default presets. So you have presets for blood. So I'm just going to change the color of the car to bloody red. I know it sounds very rude, but yeah, you can change it to something like a balloon or a brush metal. Sorry, I'm just replacing it with the brush metal. So you can see it gives me a very silvery but a little matte finish kind of a thing. And also I have something like gold, in case if you're somewhere in the Middle East, you want to show your clients that you can have a gold color car as well. I'm not sure whether it happened. Let me just do it once again. Change it to gold. Yes, and of course you can change the color of the gold to dark orange or whatever. Make it more goldeny and stuff. Now not only that, if you are happy with a normal car paint and a gold, for example, you can also mix both of them. Like for example, I'm just going to go to car paint and I say I don't want to replace all of them. I just want 50% of car paint and 50% of the gold. So you can mix and match both of them and then decide whether the color of this has to be matching with this or that. So you can choose to have more percentage of the car paint, like 75% of the car paint, and or less of the car paint and more of the gold. So this gives you a dual tone kind of an effect. So that's absolutely possible. And not only that, if you're creating something like a liquid, milk, honey, skin, and including glass, you can use the presets and then move to just modify it depending on your requirement. So it's as easy as you can see. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, so let me jump back to the presentation part. Yep. So yeah, GPU updates. Why GPU? So Arnold CPU was there for quite a long time. I mean, like for years, people used to use it. Then Autodesk acquired Arnold, say about 3.5, 4 years back, or 3.5 years back. And since then, there has been a lot of development. And why did we go in a GPU render, or why did we move Arnold to a GPU? Because there was a strong demand. Of course, a lot of people today are look and development guys, or people you use at least 3D, if not look and development. So CPU rendering is slowly disappearing, fading out because of the growing technology today. There is a strong demand of GPU rendering, and people want interactive look and development to be done, and also the lighting artist needs to save a lot of time doing the lighting, so they don't want to sit for hours together to just light up one scene. GPUs are getting better and better. Like Shashi is going to talk about when he's going to talk about the technology part, so I'm not going to get into that. And obviously easier to scale for a smaller studio, because a smaller studio has a good GPU already on their machine, and they don't have to leverage something else. They just, and the software is, the GPU render is a part of the software, so there is no additional investment per se. So what Autodesk did is we leveraged the partnership with NVIDIA, because NVIDIA has a good OptiX technology. Again, I would leave it to Shashi to add all these things on, but yes, the OptiX is good. It's a good competitor. It handles complex scenes for motion blur, faster GIT compilation, and OSL support. NVIDIA OptiX ray trace engine was the best technology to work together. These are the hardware requirements, but doesn't mean that your other GPUs will not support. It will, but these are the recommended ones. Why did Okay, now there are a lot of renders available in the market, but what did we do? Why did we wait for more than a year to move to a GPU based render? Is because we wanted feature compatibility, because most of the time people would have rendered in the CPU days, and now that the GPU is there, they want to move the same scenes into GPU. But most renders have an issue that the CPU render tools, the CPU shaders or CPU, the features are not compatible with the GPU. So it might skip some couple of shaders or tools and stuff like that on menus, and hence the older tools are not, the older scene files are not reusable. Or for example, if you want to split your renders between a CPU render farm and a desktop GPU or a GPU render farm, obviously if the tools or the features are not compatible, the renders will not happen. To break that bridge, we waited for almost a year, and we released a GPU CPU compatible tool. Whether the features were used in CPU or GPU, it will run on both the tools, so it's absolutely fine. Even the pixel compatibility, like if you split your renders between half to CPU and half to GPU or whatever, the end result will match and will look the same. There won't be any pixel difference, so that it becomes easier for any kind of studios to split their renders between the two CPU and GPU render farms. And of course the API compatibility, because people create a wrapper around the Arnold tool to customize it depending on their own way they want. And in case if they have customized something in the CPU days, they can use the same API to customize the GPU tool as well. As I said, the final frame render would be the same between CPU and GPU. There will be no visible difference at all. So in December 10th, 2019, after a long wait, we did release the GPU version of Arnold, which is the Arnold 6. So I'm just going to play a short video of Arnold GPU render so that you get an understanding of what this new product is all about, and then we can have a quick discussion. All right, that was the release video of Arnold 6, and there are a couple of new updates in Arnold GPU. Is the first of all, Arnold GPU is available by default with Maya 2019. Yeah, and if in case if you guys are using the older version of Maya, which does not have Arnold, you guys don't have to panic or really be worried about. All you need to go is to go to the solidangle.com and or autodeskarnold.com, and you can download the latest build of Arnold 6 and just install it in your existing system. So Maya 2020, 19, 18 will support Arnold GPU. So that's some couple of new features which has been added. The first thing is to talk about the interactivity. If you see, the interactivity is absolutely fantastic, because that's what we want. We want most of the people to not hit the render button, but just decide on looking at the decide looking at the viewport itself on how your final renders would look like. Of course, the viewport now is almost 60 to 70% closer to the final rendered view. So in case if you don't want to, you just want to decide on the basic lighting setup, you just don't have to hit the render button and decide on looking at the viewport itself. The viewport 2.0 is extremely robust now. Some examples of the Arnold GPU. This video was a old case study which was done when the Arnold was in the beta, but still you can look at the performance of the system, and especially with the subsurface scattering, especially when the skin has to have the subsurface scattering on its layers for the light to pass through it. It used to take a hell lot of time in the CPU renders, but now with the GPU one, it is really fast, and a look and development guy does not have to spend a lot of time doing lighting for such sequences. So this is an added advantage of the GPU rendering. This is not a real girl. This is basically a final output done by Mr. Shorab to showcase hair and subsurface scattering using the Arnold technology. So there are a couple of comparison between the CPU and GPU. There are a lot of them available online. You can just go and check, but this is something which I want to show, that there is no pixel difference between a CPU and a GPU output. This is again for the same. So just to talk about, we released our partnership with NVIDIA in the SIGGRAPH 2018. Yes, 2018, and we had showcased. This was a partnership with Autodesk, NVIDIA, Cinesite, Marvel. So they gave us their actual site of a Spider-Man, where it was a huge setup, huge massive setup, and on the booth we had a 4K output with an RTX card, and people could just play around with it, and it delivered the output real time. Unfortunately, we don't have an RTX card right now because of the a lot of limitations, as in I don't have the right hardware today to showcase, but very soon we will release out a video so that you can compare both of them. So Arnold GPU, very flexible. You can seamlessly move between CPU and GPU. So there is just one button which you need to do. Rest everything is the same. So that's the reason I didn't get into a lot of the features, because we have most of us have already seen the features. If not, then there are videos online which you can go through. But the whole idea is, if you want to switch between a CPU to GPU rendering, all you need to go to the render setup and do that, which I will be talking about. And if you want to add multiple GPUs, you can do that, which will help you get a faster output. And it's also optimized for the NVIDIA RTX technology. How and what is the benefit? I will let Shashi talk about it. So this was a scene which I tested yesterday on my hardware, of course, an old hardware, when I was trying to work around this for this model with a sky map, which is there are some updates on the sky environment lighting. But you can see the CPU took 2.22 seconds, whereas the GPU rendering took some just 47 seconds on my old hardware. So, and with the sampling of 10:2:2 versus CPU was just 6 sampling. So you can see the performance difference. So that's the power of GPU rendering. It saves a lot of time, and of course the artist patience as well. So there are a couple of new enhancements. OSL shaders, OSL mapping technology, the shading, open shading language has been improved. So this is the first stage of OSL being supportive in GPU as well. It was obviously supported in the CPU days, but in the GPU, the OSL shading network is now compatible. Of course, it's in the first stage. There are still some limitations, but we will overcome that very soon. And obviously the VDB support is also there in the first stage of GPU. On-demand texture loading. If you remember, people who have used Arnold before, it used to convert the maps automatically when you hit the first render button, but now it doesn't do that, because you can change or convert the map depending on your interest or your time, your requirement. There are new matte shaders, which is very simple, but a couple of them, like the new improved sky shaders, is something which I would like to talk about. I'm just going to go inside Maya and say new scenes. Okay, let me say, okay, fine, no, everything's smooth so far. So I'm just going to go inside and say yes, just open this setup. I will make sure that the rendering is still in CPU, because I want to compare the CPU and the GPU part both to you. All right, it's still loading. Yeah, I also want to tell you guys, in case if you guys have are working on the current version of Maya from version 2017, 18 to 19 or 20, there has been a huge performance difference. I'm not very sure if you guys have noticed it. Like the file which used to take couple of minutes to load on in the software, from version 19, the loading is also become less than half the time. So it's much more interactive. So performance enhancement is huge in Maya now, and including previous packs, of course. So I will just hide the sky light, and I just want to show you what this is. A basic Buddha statue, which was actually a tabletop object on one of my colleagues' table. I took some photographs of this, uploaded on Recap, which is the Autodesk photogrammetry tool, and the Recap stitches all the pictures together, and then it gave me a 3D model of the same Buddha. So it's as easy as you can see. I didn't have to go and create this model, so I saved a lot of time to, instead of me going and modeling this object, but just click some pictures and upload them. So why am I telling you all this is I'm going to talk about at the later part of the presentation. So I just go inside lights and say physical light. There has been some enhancement on physical light. So, and of course I have added a backlight to this. I can also hide the backlight. And when I go inside Arnold, and let me check if it's still on the CPU. Okay, let me just make it CPU for now. And I'm just going to say hit the render button. Okay, I just need to create a new scene. Once again, there is all right. So the whole idea to talk about recap was to show a workflow from a realistic object to clicking pictures, uploading on recap, creating a 3D model, which I took into Mudbox. Mudbox is again an Autodesk tool for sculpting and painting. I did some touch-ups wherever needed, and then I imported inside Maya. Inside Maya, I could add textures, shaders, whatever I want to do, add lighting to it using the Arnold render, and then all I need to do is just hit render. And maybe if I want to composite, I can do that at a very easy way. Let me just go back and check. I hope it works this time. Oops, 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 oops. I'll have to close Maya, I guess. Yeah, just a second. I'll have to close my application. And this is exactly what I said. Old, very old hardware, which does not have all the right drivers. That's why the sluggishness. That's absolutely fine. Just a couple of seconds for Maya to load. And I hope okay, I hope this one was fine. On the bottom of the scene, you can see this is a huge heavy file because it comes from recap, and the meshes is triangulated. Of course, I didn't do the retopology. I could have done it overnight, but I didn't get really didn't get some time to work on this file. But yes, of course, even with the heavy mesh and so on, it does a fantastic job and does the rendering quickly. So anyways, let me just hit the render and check if it works this time. Well, yes, it does. What I want to do is, this is a normal object and this is still in the CPU. Fine, it works fine for me, and it takes a while to render. Now what I can do is, it's still refreshing. I'm like this, the rendering is still not done. So instead of me waiting for the render to happen, what I can do is go to the render settings, and you have, maybe I just reduce the camera samplings a bit because I want to do a demo and you guys are waiting. All I need to do is move this from CPU to GPU. Okay, and nothing else. And when I hit render, it's the same thing, the same shader, the same parameters, everything is the same. And all I need to do is just work with the viewport, and you can see the rendering iterations is much more faster than what the CPU was, because CPU would almost take a lot of time, and in this case I'm getting the output faster, much more faster than what it used to be with the CPU. Anyways, the whole idea was to talk about some improvements in Arnold 6, which is the skylight. So if I go inside the Arnold lighting and say import physical sky, which I've already imported, so I go inside the physical light, and also I have another area light. So I'm just going to go inside and say hit render, which is already there somewhere. Yeah, you have a physical sky. I mean, you already had a physical sky in the previous version as well, but there has been some updates because of various things. Like for example, if I go inside the area, not the area light, but the physical light, the physical sky, sorry, you can work with a lot of things like the intensity. Okay, sorry, it's the sky dome. Yeah. Wait, sorry, I imported the sky dome. Yeah, the physical skies here. So you can play around with the various things, and there are a couple of things which is like the ground albedo, the the turbidity, which is basically the ground clearance. This includes a lot of fog, mist, snow in the environment. So if you reduce this, the environment will be much more clearer and so on. If you increase this, it will be a lot of haziness in the scene. So you can play around with this very easily. The ground albedo is basically the reflection of the ground light in the atmosphere. Elevation is basically the sun. If you want the sunlight to move in a different direction, you can do that. It's going up, 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 up now, or you can move it down, down, down now. So I'm just randomly taking it down. And not only that, if you want the sun to move left or right, you can do that using the azimuth. So it's now going on the left hand side, whereas I can just push it to the right, and it can actually be behind the characters. So this is nothing but the sun, which you can have a real effect of the sun on the object which you have. So if you want to reduce the intensity, you can do so by making the intensity say about 0.1 or something, so that it's really lighter. And let me just say it's there. And the size of the sun, if you increase it, you can see this small ball is the sun. But of course, this is not a moon, so you cannot see the sun so clearly. So instead of this, I would like to have the intensity much more brighter, so that it actually looks like a sunlight to me and not like a moonlight to me. So let's say I just make it 0.6 so that it's not too brighter. Yeah, I'm like various things which needs to be performed. All right, so this is a clear idea about real-time rendering. And if you want, you can just move your scenes, and you can see that the sunlight actually affects your object in real. And all you need to do is just play around with the environment and get the best out of your best rendering output out of your video. So with that, I would just move to the presentation part. Yes, the surface scattering also has a lot of improvement. And yes, the USD components, because now Autodesk wants a part of Autodesk continues efforts to accelerate the adoption of open standards to benefit the larger industry requirements. A collection of components or for Arnold is Arnold in the USD ecosystem, including the Hydra rendering technology. I mean, this is more like an open file system which can be shared among all the industry standard softwares. So USD is one of them. And if you want the Arnold to be compatible with that, and so on, the nodes are and the properties are available on the GitHub. The link will be available to anyone who wants to get into the GitHub environment and do customize your Arnold based on the USD component. So that's an improvement which has been added to it. So I mean, like I would like to talk a lot about the software, yes, but then I can just keep going on and on and on and on. But let's also hear about the technology part. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Shashi Kumar Nair, who is the senior solution architect with NVIDIA, and he would talk about the technology used behind the behind the Arnold the renderer, and the latest RTX acceleration. How does it work, and how can it make your life much more simpler and faster? So Shashi, over to you.
Thank you, Samit, and I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we
All right.
can.
So without investing much time, let's get into the presentation. I hope all of you are taking care of yourselves and not stepping out at all. Stay home, stay safe. All right. So NVIDIA, as you know, is we started our journey as a graphics card company or a GPU company. The term GPU was coined by NVIDIA, which basically is graphics processing unit. And thanks to all of our customers, we enjoy quite a enviable position in the market when it comes to professional graphics. So if you look at visual computing as a segment, you will see a whole lot of challenges nowadays. Almost all of these challenges are had been brought up because of one change or one enhancement. That is the quality of content which we consume today. Whether it's a TV series or whether it's a movie, whether it's an animated feature, the quality of the visuals which we expect from all of this, whatever we consume today, is pretty high. We as a consumer, we don't agree to a lower quality visual anymore. So that basically means a whole lot of extra data to process. As your scene goes high resolution, as your scene goes from full HD to 4K to now maybe 8K in future, the amount of data you have to handle, the amount of data your computer has to handle, their application has to handle, increases tremendously. On top of it, you have you're looking at CPU. When you look at CPU as a computing engine, you see that it's not scaling up as it should, compared to the growth in your data size. And then you have new technologies such as virtual reality coming in. There are people who want to simulate certain things on the GPUs. And then AI, artificial intelligence, is actually getting into all of the applications, all of the usage scenarios which we currently do. So these are some of the challenges which our customers face. And one of them, which we wanted to take on as a company, as a graphics processing company, or as a visual computing company, was the ray tracing, right? Ray tracing happens to be the most advanced light simulation technology to create realistic scenes. And that happens to be one of the most compute intensive operations as well. If you look at a rendering cycle, almost 40 to 50% of the time is spent in ray tracing calculations. And it's a pretty compute intensive task, which is a part of your regular renders. Now, almost all of you, I mean, or all of you probably know what exactly is ray tracing and how it is important for creating realistic scenes. It's basically roughly put, it's basically the simulation of light. It's the simulation of behavior of light in a scene, and how light interacting with different objects in the scene. How to simulate that particular behavior is what you do with that. So we wanted to accelerate the rendering part, because rendering happens to be one of the most compute intensive operations in production. And we said, okay, let's take a look at the components which are basically taking time in rendering, and ray tracing stood out as a contender. And that is where we introduced this technology called as RTX. Now, please don't ask me what is the full form of RTX. You can interpret it actually. It is ray tracing, and the X stands for accelerated or extended. You can define it yourselves. But it is basically ray tracing in an accelerated format, right? So that is basically what is RTX is all about. I will tell you a little more about what exactly drives RTX as a technology from behind. So roughly put, RTX is a fusion of real-time graphics, accelerated ray tracing, and deep learning that brings the realism into your scene. At the back end of RTX is an architecture, a GPU architecture called as Turing, Turing, on Alan Turing. So the Turing architecture is different from the previous architectures which we had. As you know, NVIDIA comes out with new architectures every 1.5 years. The latest one which we came out before Turing was the Volta, and Turing basically builds upon Volta and introduces many new features into it. So what are the new features, or what are the different things which are available in Turing, which is not available in other architectures? First of all, Turing introduces something called as RT cores. RT cores is nothing but ray tracing cores. Now, these are a separate set of cores which basically has the job of doing ray tracing. So anything which is related to ray tracing, any algorithm, any mathematical calculations which is a part of ray tracing can be offloaded to this specific set of cores, which basically means your CUDA cores, which are basically in charge of creating all the textures and doing all the calculations, are no more in charge of doing the ray tracing part. Imagine taking off around 40 to 50% of the task, which is a part of the rendering cycle, from the GPU and offloading it to a separate set of cores which are designed for doing only that. So this is a specific set of cores which can only do path tracing algorithms. So path tracing algorithms can be used for light. It can be used for sound as well, right? It can also be used for electromagnetic waves. So that's a different subject altogether. So RT cores are basically path tracing cores, which are part of the GPU, which are integrated into the GPU as a separate set of cores, which will take care of the ray tracing algorithms, which is part of your rendering workflow. So that is the first part. And the second part is something called as tensor cores, which was introduced in the Volta architecture. Now, tensor cores is a matrix multiplying engine. It's again another set of cores which are part of the GPU. These cores, the tensor cores, are basically AI inferencing cores. So artificial intelligence has a big role in our day-to-day design applications, which I will tell you some examples later. But just understand that if your renderer or if your application has got a AI component in it, then tensor cores can actually execute that AI component better than any other cores available in the GPU. So tensor cores are the second part of it. And of course, every GPU comes with shaders. So we have improved the shaders which are available in Turing to give you much better performance for VR and GPU compute and so on and so forth. Which basically means your regular rendering also will work fantastically well on the Turing GPU, and your regular interactive work, your design work will also get accelerated because of the new features which are there in the advanced shaders which we have introduced in Turing, right? And last but not the least, there is a technology called as NVLink. I'll tell you more about NVLink later. So Turing architecture supports NVLink on the higher end of the GPUs, and how NVLink helps you is something which I'll tell you a little later. Okay, so RTX is basically a combination of all of this in hardware, plus a whole lot of deep learning algorithms. So now deep learning is basically a technology to create artificial intelligence, and NVIDIA is at the forefront of this technology. We have invested a lot of money into it. We have a research department, which is basically NVIDIA research, doing a whole lot of new algorithms. And one of the areas where we concentrated was on media entertainment. And we have created a lot of algorithms which many companies, including Autodesk, has taken into their products. So basically, it's a combination of new hardware features plus a whole lot of deep learning and other algorithms which are bundled into a technology called as RTX. So that's basically RTX, and RTX is the one which Turing GPUs are the one which drives the RTX technology. And very happy to say that Arnold is one of the first renderers to fully implement RTX into the rendering pipeline. All right. So I told you that AI plays a very important part in our design workflow nowadays. So what are the things which AI can do? So these are some of the examples. This is not the complete list. These are some of the examples which we have worked on, which NVIDIA has worked on. So first of all, AI facial animation. As an animator, you know how difficult it is to animate the facial muscles when dialogue delivery happens in an animated movie. So that's one of the toughest parts for an animator. And a company, we worked with one of the companies out there to create a deep learning algorithm which can automatically animate the facial muscles based on a recorded clip. So you just have to record the clip, the dialogue as an audio clip, and then feed that audio clip into the neural network, and the neural network will automatically go and animate the facial muscles on that particular character. So that's something which we did with one of our ISVs. AI facial animation. So AI is used extensively in this. Another example is denoising. So now with denoising, artificial intelligence denoising turned on, you don't have to actually wait for the noise to be to clear from a render preview. The white spaces which we see the noise, it will automatically be taken care by the AI algorithm. It basically makes it easy for you to iterate, because you're not now waiting for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes for the noise to go away and then the rendered scene to become clear. So denoising is another example. What basically happens is the pixels which are to be filled in the places are calculated or predicted by a AI network without having to compute it completely. So that's another example. One more example is AI anti-aliasing. As you are aware, the more anti-aliasing you apply on a scene, the slower your application becomes, because the GPU has to put in a lot of efforts to do the computation behind the anti-aliasing. So we have created another network, neural network algorithm, which can create anti-aliasing without having to put all the load on your GPU core. So that's another example. And then, of course, super resolution. If you have a 2K picture, you want to scale it up to 4K. There are algorithms available in the market now, but then this one, which is assisted by AI, does it without losing the details in the picture. So when you scale it from 4K to 8K, it will actually look like an original 8K photograph. So these are some of the examples of where AI is used, and these most of these are available in your commercial applications today. And OptiX, which is our API, also contains parts of these algorithms. And these algorithms can be run on the tensor cores which are available in the RTX GPU, and that makes it faster than running it on a regular GPU without tensor cores. So that's basically the importance of AI in design workflow. All right. So we spoke about NVLink. I just want to tell you what it is and how important it is, or how helpful it is. NVLink is basically the technology of connecting two GPUs together. So if you have, say, two RTX 6000 GPUs, which are 24 GB each, you can connect these GPUs with a bridge. It's a hardware bridge, which is called as an NVLink bridge. And the application, when programmed properly, of course, something like Arnold is done to do that, programmed to do that. The application can actually see the combined memory of these cards, so 24 GB plus 24 GB, 48 GB, as a single virtual memory space, which basically means, and it can also combine the compute power of these GPUs together, right? Which basically means that if you have a scene which is say 30 GB in size, which will take 30 GB, of course, you won't be able to load it on an RTX 6000 GPU because the memory is only 24 GB. But if you have two RTX 6000 GPUs, and if you combine it with an NVLink, and if your application is aware of that, you can actually load a 30 GB or 35 GB scene into this and work on it, leveraging the power of GPUs. So that's what NVLink does for you. On a workstation, you can connect two cards together, and on server systems which have got dedicated NVLink on the motherboard, you can have as high as 8 or 16 GPUs combined together using the NVLink or NVSwitch. So that's another technology which is brought into Turing, and which is working fantastically well with the modern renderer like Arnold, right? So that's another feature which I wanted to talk about. So to give you an idea of what are the GPUs available from the RTX Quadro RTX stable, you have the 4000, which is an 8 GB GPU, does not support NVLink, 5000 16 GB, 6000 24 GB, and then the highest one, RTX 8000, which has got 48 GB of video memory in it. 5000, 6000, and 8000 support NVLink connection technology, so that you can scale between GPUs when you need to. All right. So moving on. Now you may have a doubt. Which card should I select? You have RTX cards in consumer, in GeForce, as well as in Quadro. Why should I select Quadro, or why should I select GeForce? Of course, GeForce cards also support the features which I spoke about, but then GeForce cards are not actually designed for doing heavy, continuous, tasks such as rendering. They are created for PCs and consumer, basically consume content for gaming and PCs and enjoying multimedia, so on and so forth. They are not created for design applications or continuous run of renderers and so on and so forth. In addition to that, the GeForce cards don't come with the kind of memory, the large memory footprint as that of Quadro. For example, the RTX 6000 can give you 24 GB of GPU memory, and RTX 8000 can give you 48 GB of video memory. and you combine two RTX 8000 cards, you get a huge 96 GB of video memory space, virtual video memory space, which you can leverage for your most complex scenes, which you want to render out. So that's something which I wanted to point out here. If you are in a production scenario, if you have deadlines to adhere to, if you're looking for a reliable, scalable card, then look at the Quadro, the enterprise card, as an option, not at the GeForce. Some benefits of Quadros against the consumer cards. There are workflow acceleration in terms of ISP support. So there are features which are available on the Quadro which accelerate your application performance compared to your consumer cards. It comes with more reliable memory such as ECC memory, which makes sure that your application does not crash often. You don't get those single bit ECC errors, memory errors inside when you move the data from CPU to memory, CPU to GPU, or GPU to GPU. So that's something which is available in enterprise level cards only, right? And then the drivers are tested and fine-tuned for most of the enterprise class applications, and it's tested and it is certified with ISPs like Autodesk to make sure that every module of your application runs without any problem on Quadro GPUs, right? And the OEM workstation vendors also test it for seamless operation. If you leave it out, leave the system on for say 1 week rendering a particular scene, it's a guarantee that the card or the system is not going to burn out, right? So that's the kind of testing which our ISV or OEM workstation vendors do with us. Okay, and there are many management tools. If you are an enterprise customer, there are many management tools which are available to manage your GPUs in an enterprise scenario. So get in touch with me or your Autodesk partner for details on this and how it is beneficial to you. Now, in a traditional content generation process, you will have a render node at the backend, which runs your batch jobs, and you basically use a CPU in that, and you have to basically wait for the renderer to happen, the rendering to happen, and then you get a result back, and then go and do the modification. So the iteration between the design and the rendering, and the feedback and the correction, that basically takes a long time because the CPUs take a long time to render your scenes. What is the way out of it? Add more CPUs, right? Add more servers, which is basically a whole lot of time consuming and manageability nightmare. So we came out with this concept called as RTX server. Now it is not a server which we manufacture. This is a server which you can buy from your favorite OEM vendor such as HP or Dell or IBM or Lenovo. This basically is a concept where you can host say 8 or 10 RTX cards in a single server. Now, how do you use this? So RTX server is basically a very high density GPU server. It can be used in multiple ways actually, right? You can use it as a render node because once you have applications like Arnold, which is GPU accelerated and which is RTX accelerated, your render times will come down considerably, and that's what CineSite witnessed when they moved from the traditional rendering method to Arnold with RTX. From 2 shots a day, they were able to go up to 7 shots a day, right? So that's the kind of acceleration they saw when they adopted RTX. Now there are 2 ways you can use an RTX server. You can go use it for offline rendering, like CineSite did, or there is another way of using that. You can actually use it for creating virtual workstations also. Now virtual workstations is an interesting concept, especially at the time of a lockdown like this. I know many of our customers are actually struggling to get access to their physical systems which are sitting in their offices. So if you move from a physical workstation based technology, physical workstation based workflow to a virtual workstation based workflow, these kind of problems can be tackled much easily. Once you go virtual, you don't have to worry about where your system is situated. It is available on the network 24/7. You can be anywhere in the world as long as you have a network connectivity. You can work on your project. You can finish your project. You don't have to carry your data. You don't have to carry your application license. You don't have to carry anything which is heavy so that you can work on your application. So consider going virtual as early as you can. Once we are all out of this lockdown, it will make your lives much easier. And who knows, nobody can guarantee that this is the last time we are going into a lockdown, right? This can happen again. This can happen many times in the future. So consider moving to virtual workstations rather than using physical workstations. And RTX server basically fits very nicely into it. You can have 8 GPUs in an RTX server. You can allocate 1 GPU to 1 virtual machine and create 8 virtual machines out of that server. In the daytime, your design workflow, design users can use these GPUs for their design workflow. And at nighttime, you can switch off the virtual machines. You can combine all of these GPUs into a single render farm, and your render jobs can run on that. So that's the kind of concept which we are talking about here. Now, what kind of acceleration did we see when we tested RTX? This is the kind of acceleration which we saw. So around 25 times acceleration is what we witnessed when we used RTX, compared to a CPU-based server. You can see that here. Total render time for 120 frames went down from 76 hours to 3 hours. So that's a huge improvement if you talk about the time. So not just the time. If you look at the statistics behind that, below that, you can see that the number of nodes, the number of servers you have to manage went down from 25 to 1. The power consumed by the whole setup went down from 13 kilowatts to 1.9 kilowatts. The acquisition cost, the power cost. So all of that basically comes down. Your management nightmares go away when you reduce the number of nodes and put very strong nodes which are GPU enabled into the render farm, right? So if you want to quantize it in terms of number of CPUs and number of servers, this is what it basically looks like. Your RTX server solution will cost you 1/4 of the cost of getting the same performance from a only CPU enabled render farm. All right. So we spoke about virtual workstations. This is how the virtual workstation stack will look like. You have the server and you have the GPUs, which are the RTX 6000 and 8000 GPUs sitting on that. And then you have the NVIDIA software stack, which basically has the CodaX AI stack if you're from AI side, OptiX basically for the rendering customers, and Quadro VDWS because you need to allocate virtual machines out of these GPUs, and then you can have your applications running on top of it. It could be Maya, it could be 3D Studio Max, doesn't matter. You can use your GPU enabled renders on it. Everything is supported. Only difference is that instead of sitting on a physical system, on a physical workstation, you are basically accessing a virtual workstation, which is available to you 24/7, no matter where you are. Right? That's basically the advantage here. And for some of our customers who don't want to put these graphics cards on end clients such as workstations, we have these cards available in server form factor as well. So 6000 and 8000, even though it's a Quadro card, they are available in a fanless data center server friendly manner as well. We have just launched this. It is available from your favorite OEMs. So if you are planning a render farm with Arnold GPU version, consider these cards in your servers. Talk to us if you need more information on this and you need more details on how to go about using this. That's all from my side on RTX. I will pass it on to Samit back, and we can take any questions if you have post that. Samit, back to you.
Hey, thank you, Shashi. That was really a great, bunch of knowledge in terms of technology, because even I had a couple of questions in my mind, but now I think a lot of them are cleared. Thank you so much. So, guys, moving back to my side of the presentation, it's nothing much left now. But since Shashi was talking about, I hope Shashi, you guys can see my screen, right? I'm assuming you guys can see my screen. Okay. Yeah. So since Shashi was talking about the denoise, the OptiX denoise by NVIDIA, we have on in the render settings, you can see I have a frame rendered on GPU, and there is an OptiX denoiser which basically leverages the NVIDIA graphic card for a single frame render immediately for the look and development guide. So whenever they're doing one frame render to decide on what kind of rendering, what kind of look they getting, and they don't want to do a final render, so the samplings and all would be less. But you can see on the screen there are a couple of grains which kind of be disturbing. So if you keep this denoising on, and click on this RGB denoise, immediately, instantly you get a cleared, non-noised image. So you can say denoised image. Like I'm just going to toggle between the beauty and the RGB denoise. This is very fantastic and very quick. And of course, when you want to output, you can keep the output denoising on so that the final image rendered also gets the same. So this is a fantastic feature which is available for the look and development guys for their single frame rendering, and they can decide on the lighting, the lighting part of the entire scene. Cool. So coming back to my presentation, thank you so much, Shashi, for the information. And what I want to do is open the session for Q&A. I am sure that you guys must be having a lot of questions. So you guys have written your questions in the question panel. So let me just quickly read out some of them. Some of the questions I have been answered on the private chat by me. So Rahul, I hope you guys, you Rahul, Sanap have got the answers. High price of professional GPU is a big constraint for the up. So Faisal writes, high price of professional GPU is a big constraint for the startups. Faisal, I agree, and I would also request Shashi to be a part of the discussion because it's more on the GPU hardware price. Shashi, you have anything like, you must have met a lot of startups, smaller startups, and do you have any idea like by investing on a little expensive GPUs, what are the benefits actually they have gained out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the cost of the GPU, I mean, if you're looking at only the acquisition cost of the GPU, then yeah, I will agree that it is higher than your consumer GPUs, and there is a reason for that. If you look at a consumer GPU, you will see that NVIDIA does not manufacture a consumer GPU. When we only manufacture the core component of the consumer GPU, and when we leave it out to our ICs or integrators to decide what kind of design should go onto the GPU and what kind of cooling, what kind of components, so on and so forth. And we don't control that. And by virtue of that, we don't control the performance you are going to get out of that GPU or the experience you are going to get out of that GPU. So on the contrary, if you look at a Quadro or a professional grade GPU, it is designed completely end to end by NVIDIA, and every component you get in that GPU is selected, tested, and certified by NVIDIA. And then there is a lot of efforts which go into getting these GPUs tested with all the ISV applications and certification. So it's a whole lot of different game altogether when it comes to a professional GPU. Now, how do you benefit from paying the high price? It's not just about the acquisition price, right? How much, what's the kind of productivity you are going to get from that? What's the kind of reliability you are looking at from your rig? Are you happy with frequent disruptions? Are you happy? Are you okay with frequent disruptions, or are you okay with a little less productivity because you don't want to upfront invest a little more money in a enterprise class GPU? So we are not blocking you from using the see, don't misunderstand me, I'm not blocking you from using GeForce GPUs. If you're a startup, if you have a budget constraint, and if your models and if your workflow is good enough for a GeForce GPU, consumer GPU, please by all means use it. And we have not blocked any features from our GeForce GPUs. If you actually see, if you look at a high-end GeForce GPU, for example, a Titan RTX or a 2080 Ti, you still have the RT cores, you still have the tensor cores, all of them available. Of course, it will be a little less than that what you will get in a professional GPU. But if you have complex scenes, if you want to do more, then you have to look at a Quadro GPU, because the higher memory footprint, like 16 GB and not more than that, it's only available from a professional GPU, not from a consumer GPU. So there is a choice. I mean, I'm not saying that please don't buy GeForce GPUs or please don't work on that. Please do. But there is a choice depending on what exactly you want to do, what kind of experience and performance you want to get from your system. There is a choice.
Cool. Thanks so much, Shashi. I hope it answers a couple of questions from Faisal. Yes, the other question has been asked by, okay, one second, I'm just gonna, okay, I hope Avinash is sharing the poll questions. Guys, please answer the poll questions. It's a little bit of information which we can gather, and that's how we can make the next sessions more interesting for you guys. Second question is from Kaushik Hegde. He's asking, is this, does it, okay, where is the question gone? Also available for 3ds Max, right? So Kaushik, yes. When we released the Arnold GPU, we released it for almost all the softwares for GPU. So even 3ds Max, the by default rendering now after 2020.1, which just got released last week, the default render is Arnold render, and you can leverage the the GPU rendering inside within 3ds Max. It's also. Also, I'll be very soon. I think the date has been decided. I'm not pretty sure it's 16th or 17th, but we have a webinar on 3ds Max 2020.1. This is purely based on the request which was done to me in my last Maya webinar. So I'm going to do a 2020.1 which got released last week, and also a bit of Arnold will be done in the same webinar. Yes, who's asked this question is Nilesh is asking. Perfect, Nilesh. You are looking for a lot of ready-made materials for 3ds Max Arnold, the same, right? As given in Maya. You'll be very happy to know that 3ds Max has much more materials in Arnold, and there is a huge update in 3ds Max 2020.1. So if you stay tuned and be available for the next webinar, I'm sure you will have a lot to you will have a good news when it comes to 3ds Max. Freelancers artist, which GPU are recommended? Gaurav is asking, Shashi, for freelancer artist, which GPU you would recommend?
So the selection of the GPU should be based on what kind of workload you have or what kind of models you have. If you're looking at a GeForce series GPU, I would recommend you go with the 2080 Ti. But if you want to look at a professional grade GPU, my starting point would be the RTX 5000 for you, which is a 16 GB 16 GB video memory card. It also supports all the features which we spoke about now. And in future, if you want to increase the power of your rig, you can just go for another RTX 5000 and you use an NVLink to connect them together. So that would be my recommendation for. And we also have mobile workstations, which are laptops, which give you the same level of performance with RTX GPUs in the market. Some of them are already there. Some of them are coming out very soon. So if you prefer a mobile workstation kind of a platform, you can actually look at that as well. Those also comes with RTX GPUs now.
So Nilesh has one more question, that is, why 3ds Max Arnold is not upgraded as same as like Maya? So Nilesh, I don't know if you've checked the latest Arnold build in 3ds Max. Of course, see, the thing is basically Maya and Max are two different products, and there are different people developing the tools, and there are different challenges. But if you see, the development, if something can happen in Maya, would not necessary that you can put the same tool inside Max immediately, because the software has to support various things based on the code. But yes, there has been a lot of efforts being put to bring both the developments on the same platform, so that everything that's available in Max will be available in Maya, and vice versa. If you see, there are a couple of things which are very handy inside 3ds Max but not available in Maya. So yeah, we are trying to balance it both, and hopefully very soon things will be on the same platform. So so there was a question on Softimage. I think Mohammed Saif asked, like, is it supported on Softimage? Yes, but I'm not pretty sure about the GPU tool, because Softimage is gone. I'm like, there is no development on Softimage from since couple of years. So the only thing which people might require is just the Arnold support, and that's available now. There are a couple of more questions. So can we install one Arnold in two different PCs for network rendering, or do I need to buy? Okay, so Nilesh, good that you brought it out. I was not planning to talk about the licensing structure. but there used to be just one kind of licensing until last year. But since this year, there is something called as network license. So if you know the network licensing structure of Max and Maya, the license will sit on a server, and all the different machines can pull it depending on their requirement. So yes, now your license of Arnold can sit on the server, and whichever machine wants to pull the license can do so. All right, guys.
So there is a question, sorry, Samit, there's a question which said, any complex modeling I want to do, shall I go to GPU or TPU? TPUs only support deep learning, and they only support one framework of deep learning. So if you're talking about graphics, then it should be GPU, not TPU. Thanks.
Yep, perfect. So Shabir asked, will Arnold give the better result than the other competitive product? I don't want to name them in the same architectural visualization. Yeah, Shabir, basically Arnold is a industry tried and tested renderer. It has been used for a lot of Hollywood movies before, and now Bollywood movies are also using it. And why do we and what do we want out of the movies is basically a photorealistic output, right? Nobody wants the audience to know that this is CG, this is fake. So if something can be achieved in movies for photorealistic output, why not for design visualization? So the whole answer is yes, you can get an output, a realistic output out of Arnold with your design visualization also. Secondly, it's a part of your software. I mean, you don't have to actually go and spend money buying a third-party plugin to do something, which you can do it free of cost, which is available in your software in 3ds Max and Maya. So that's a whole bunch of big advantage for you guys who are a 3D artist using 3ds Max and Maya. It is available inside your software free of cost, and not just CPU, GPU as well. So just make the best out of it. So yeah, Bala Raghavendra, your answer is the same. Obviously, your competitive product which you're mentioning is an open source. There is just open community who was helping it, whereas 3ds Max and Maya have been there in the industry for quite a long time. I don't want to compare anything to anyone because that's how it has been designed. But yes, Arnold is inbuilt, it's free, and there are dedicated team members who are developing it. I'm like, talking about open source, it's just everyone randomly would like to develop, can develop. But then when it comes to support, you will have to approach the community, and as and when people have time, they will respond. But there, with Arnold, with the Autodesk, there are dedicated team, spending their time and money to develop this tool. The rest is your choice. I mean, like, it's absolutely, up to you guys. All right, we've already crossed the line, the time, and we have covered all the questions. Okay, one thing which I want to announce currently is very soon we will be coming up with a contest. There are two contests here. One is an Arnold contest, Arnold GPU contest, which we'll be announcing very soon, maybe a day or two. You guys will get the details on a separate email or social media platform and so on. The other contest would be for the Autodesk Media and Entertainment Collection. If you remember, I was talking about this, like, I took some photographs and then took it to Recap and then created the model. Then I took it inside 3ds Max or Maya and blah, 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 used whatever. So if you remember, Autodesk Collection is a bundle of 8 to 9 products, right from sketchbook to character generator, Recap, motion builder, Mudbox, 3ds Max, Maya, and 5 license of Arnold. You can download all these products trial version from the net and try to complete a workflow based on your knowledge, based on your experience, your industry experience, and the workflow, which you can just check it online, and you submit it to Autodesk, and win you get a chance to win some really fantastic gifts from Autodesk. And also we, for this contest, for the contest of Arnold, we have partnered with NVIDIA, and you stand a chance to win some really exciting gifts. More details will be sent to you guys very soon when we have the final landing page and the page designed and stuff. So stay tuned, and all the best, guys. I guess all the poll questions have been answered and closed. So with that, I would like to thank all of you guys who attended the session, and a special thanks to Shashi from NVIDIA for spending all his valuable time today and sharing fantastic knowledge to all of you guys, including me. And of course, this was done in a very short notice. So thank you so much, Shashi, as well.
Thank you, guys. Nice talking to you all. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.